as Seth mentioned a few minutes ago, we're starting our Christmas series we've titled, What Home Feels Like. And through this series, we want to make our way through the words of Advent. And as you heard Eric read, we read about the faith of Joseph. By the way, Eric is one of our interns here. Love having him in our student ministry serving. But we read about the faith of Joseph. And today I want to talk about this idea of faith, but faith in the context of hard times. I think it's easy to have faith when everything is going well and the skies are blue and your kids are getting A's and they obey you and they don't need to go to the orthodontist. Then it's easy to believe. But it's on the hard days that we have a hard time having faith. In fact, I'll describe Joseph's faith and the things that they go through in this Christmas story as a dark winter of the soul. And maybe you don't know what a winter of the soul is like. I think a winter of the soul is like the hardest winter you've ever been through. And in Arizona, we can't really appreciate that, can we? About 2 weeks ago, we had 3 days of winter. Winter started. Remember this? Right before Thanksgiving, it rained for 3 days in a row. There was no sunshine. And some of you, I heard you saying things like, oh, this is amazing. I wish I was like this every day. You don't know what you're saying at all. Yeah. I used to live in Chicago. Here's the thing that I know. Nobody spends their career working in Fort Lauderdale, then at 65 says, hey, let's move to Waukegan. Nobody does that. It doesn't work like that. When we lived in Chicago, for example, my parents were flying in at Christmas time. And so I went to drive to the airport in December, and we had a record low that year. It was minus 12 with a wind chill of over minus 30, not 100, minus 30 degree wind chill. But the hard temperature was minus 12. And I'm driving on the 90 to the airport, and I see my temperature gauge going up, and I'm like, how is it climbing? It's minus 12. And then the engine seized. And so I coasted over to the side of the freeway, popped the hood, looked under there. I'm a pastor. I don't know what I'm looking at, but guys do this. It's just part of your duty, manly duty, look under the hood. Fortunately, a guy pulls up within a minute, and he goes, what are you doing? I said, my car stalled. He said, get in. You're going to die out here. And he said, I'll take you to the airport. I told him that's right. He said, I'll drive you there. And as we're driving, he said, well, what happened to your car? I said, well, the gauge went up, and it's minus 12. He goes, yeah. He said, your antifreeze froze. All right? That's what happened. When your antifreeze freezes, it's a place human beings should not be living. And he tells me that gasoline freezes in Chicago. I didn't even know that. I think that's the kind of winter of the soul. That's the kind of hard time that Mary and Joseph were going through. We read about it. If you want to follow with me, Matthew chapter 1. The Christmas story starts in a hard time, starts in a winter of the soul. Verse 18, this is how the birth of Jesus the Messiah came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph, but, that's a really big but before they came together, she was found to be pregnant from the Holy Spirit. Now, usually, we read the Christmas story bright and cheery, and we just kind of breeze past this line where it says, his fiancée was pregnant, where we read, the baby was not Joseph's. Do you see why I say this was a winter of the soul, a hard time for Joseph? Let's put it in context of first century Israel. You have a young couple, a 16-year-old engaged girl, and she's pregnant. This is the land of the Talmud. The Talmud calls out the exacting standards for the Hebrew women and men, and their punishments were harsh. Just decades before this, Mary would have been stoned for this crime. And so, yes, it's a hard, dark night that they're about to go through. And Luke says that, we read it in Luke, that Mary was greatly troubled in her soul. Do you think? I think so. These dark winters of the soul, these hard times, I think they come on all of us. We can hope that they won't, but they do. Maybe right now, maybe even today, you're going through a hard time, a winter of the soul, and I want to say I'm sorry. But most of us know what it's like. If you've ever, for example, lost a job, you know what a winter of the soul is like. If you've moved out of state, if you've had a friend turn on you, you know what it's like. If you've had a teenager rebel, or if you've been sick and you couldn't get well, if you've ever ended a marriage, if you've cried, if you've been hurt by love, if you've had your father die, then you know what this dark winter feels like. And it feels like it won't end. And I'm sure for Joseph, that's the way it felt. And so we read next that when Joseph hits this hard time, he starts to doubt. And I'll say this, I think faith always starts with doubt, but Joseph is doubting. Let's go back to our text, verse 19. Look at that with me. Joseph, her fiance, was a good man and did not want to disgrace her publicly. So he decided to break the engagement quietly. So of course, Joseph is frustrated. Maybe he's even angry or mad. He sees the only way out of this mess that she's made, not me, is to walk out on her, is to leave her. Because she's come up with this story that she's pregnant from the Holy Spirit. And he's like, really? That's what you're going with. It happens all the time, doesn't it? You're really going to stick with this. And it's hard to believe, and so he starts to doubt. And so he thinks the only way out of this is to walk away from her. Here's the thing. I think all of us, if we're honest, we doubt in hard times. We doubt our faith. We doubt our faith in God. We doubt God, but we become doubters. In general, though, most Christians won't admit that they're doubting because we tend to be down on doubters, aren't we? We tend to make fun of like doubting Thomas, like none of us have doubted. But the truth, all of us have doubted. And I think especially when we hit something hard, when the road of life gets really tough, we start to doubt, we start to question God. But maybe doubt is not such a bad thing. I want to propose that maybe there is good in doubt. Because in many ways, you can't have faith unless there's doubt. Doubt is almost a prerequisite to faith. If you don't doubt something, you don't need faith to believe it. I'll use this as an example. So I'm going to reach in my pocket, and allegedly, I'm going to pull out a $20 bill, all right? So I've got $20 in my hand. Now, here's my question. How many of you, raise your hand, you don't have to do anything yet, I'm gonna ask for a volunteer, but raise your hand if you'll be my volunteer, if you believe, but you have to believe that I'm actually holding a $20 bill in my hand. Do we have any believers here? Any believers? We've got just a couple. All right. Seth, you're in the last service. All right, in the plaid shirt, come on up. So you actually believe this, all right? You're not just, we're kind of friends, so maybe that's why all right, tell everyone your name. Braden. All right. So Braden, you believe that there's a $20 bill here. All right. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to crush your belief. I'm actually going to destroy your belief. Do you know how I'm going to do that? No, I'm going to show you that I do have a 20. Go ahead and open it up. I only have one hand. So everyone can see it here. So I do have a 20 in my hand. My question is, now that you see the 20, you don't need faith or belief anymore, do you? How about the rest of the room? Do you all believe me now? Only Braden, like 3 other people in the room. Now do you believe? You don't need faith or belief because it's a fact that I'm holding. Once we know something, we don't need faith or belief. Our faith is needed when we question something or when there are doubts. That's why I say doubt is a prerequisite to faith. All right, I think faith and belief should be rewarded. So, Braden, we're going to hand you that this morning. That's yours. All right, all yours, bud. All right. Now, here's what I'm going to say next. I'm going to give everyone here a second chance because Jesus gives everyone a second chance. So I'm reaching in my left pocket, and I'm going to ask, now, do you believe that I have a hundy? You believe I have a hundy in my hand. All right, so we're going to check. Yes, I do. I have 100 baht. This is 100 baht from Thailand. I was there a couple of weeks ago. And so I do have you believe. I'm going to give you that hundy, but it's only like worth $3. Next time you go to Thailand, it'll get you a Coke, maybe a sandwich. Pad Thai. All right. So, but you see what I'm saying, that doubt makes faith necessary. And the good in doubt is that it makes our faith even more valuable. Think about this. If you doubt, if you question something, you research it, you dig into it. We don't give our belief away easily. I know how we're all wired. Our belief is very precious. And it takes a lot of trust until we finally go, okay, God, I believe. I'm a believer. So this is why I say that our first Advent word is faith. It starts with doubt, but then we see Joseph's faith. And so in Joseph, we just don't see doubt, but bigger than that, we see his faith. Look down at verse 20. After he had considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived of her is from the Holy Spirit. And as we keep reading, we see Joseph believes and he stays with her. But it's 9 months of everyone else around him questioning the integrity of his wife, questioning the source of the baby, but Joseph keeps believing. I want to describe Joseph's 9 months, or at least his walk from Nazareth to Bethlehem, as I'll describe it today, as the long, hard walk of faith. I think it's a long, hard road that he goes down. And today I want to look at several lessons, several things that we can pull out of Joseph's long, hard road of faith. I say it's a long, hard road because we read in Luke chapter 2. And turn in your Bibles there with me. I'm going to start in verse 1. In Luke 2, we read, in those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world, and everyone went to their own town to register. So Joseph also went up to the town of Nazareth in Galilee, to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. Now, we can read this, and we can kind of skip past how heavy it is. But I want to say, don't do that. Because here, the worst thing is happening, isn't it? So Joseph has found out that his fiancée is pregnant. He believes that it's from the Holy Spirit. Probably no one else believes him. And now Caesar Augustus himself tells him he has to go to his home. He has to go to the place where his cousins are, his aunts, his crazy uncles, and they're all going to mock him. This is not your baby, is it? And so he starts the journey. Though I think it's the worst thing. And so it's a long, hard walk from Nazareth to Bethlehem. Okay, so this is a rhetorical question, but you can raise your hand if you want. If you have kids and you've ever had a long, hard road trip, can I see your hands? All right. Or you've been on a long, hard road trip. Anyone with kids. Quite a while ago, when our 4 sons were younger, we wanted to take them on their first snowboarding trip to Colorado. And so the night before we were supposed to leave, we saw that a record snowstorm was blowing, and it was like once every 10 years they got a storm this big. And so we're like, we better leave now. So we loaded them in at 1 a.m, and we thought it would take 12 hours to get there. 12 hours, we were hardly past Albuquerque. You know, with 4 sons, there's fighting over like whose feet are touching who's what video we watching, McDonald's or Burger King. Anyway, it's taking forever, and the storm is coming. We make it to Colorado Springs. We're heading north to Denver, and then we had a condo near Vail. But just after Colorado Springs, the snowstorm hits, and it's dumping on us. But fortunately, I'm driving a Suburban. At the time, we owned a Suburban with 4-wheel drive. And this was my moment to shine. This was the day zone, is you get to put it in 4-wheel drive. And it really matters. And so we're on the road. We have good mud tires. And then we start laughing at the cars spinning out. And my kids and I say, hey, let's count. We're like 8. Now look at that. It's usually a minivan or some kind of sedan, front-wheel drive or not. They're spinning out. And they're going off in the ditch, and we think it's the funniest thing ever. And then my wife says, watch out. And I look in my rearview mirror, and here comes a mini. I love minivans, by the way. They just don't have 4-wheel drive. It's doing donuts behind us and then slams into the back of our Suburban. Now we waste the next 2 hours waiting for the police to give a report. The ambulance comes. We're all fine, but it's dark. So just outside of Denver, we don't make it to the mountain. I say, we'll have to get a hotel. We get a hotel. Fortunately, they're serving a buffet because of the storm, so all their guests can eat. But it's a seafood buffet, and we're in a landlocked state. That's never a good thing. And so we eat the seafood buffet, and I jam everybody in one room, and we all get E. coli, bacteria, Ebola, something. It was food poisoning, the worst of food poisoning. The room smelled like, foul calamari. It was horrible. I think they emptied out their freezer. The lesson is, if you ever, and I don't want to mention the name of the hotel because then maybe you won't stay, and that's not the point, but if you ever served a seafood buffet at a Holiday Inn, I would say pass. Pass, unless you're right on the coast somewhere. Just pass on that. But it was a long, miserable road. And you know what? In many ways, I think it was like that for Joseph and Mary. I looked on Google Maps, how far is it from Nazareth to Bethlehem? You can still check these things out. It's 101 miles. And you can click on walk, 34 hours. That's like 4 or 5 days. I think Joseph wasn't in a hurry. Who wants to go to Bethlehem? If you're wondering how far 101 miles is, it's about how far Ajo is. And the question is, who wants to go to Ajo? Nobody. There's no reason to go to Ajo. And it's the same. It's a desert town. Bethlehem's the same. And I don't think he's taking any shortcuts. I don't think he's telling jokes. I don't think that he's in any hurry to get there, because it's a long, hard road. Really, it's a 101-mile walk of shame. And he's been walking this walk of shame for 9 months. It's the road of God-forsakenness, isn't it? It's a road of testing. It's a road that everyone spends time on if you've gone through hard times. And like I said, most of us have. You've had hard jobs. Some of you have had hard marriages, or we can have hard children. We can have hard friendships. Sometimes our finances get really hard. Life is like that. When I read the story of Joseph, you have to believe that he wants to quit and turn around, give up on Mary, turn around and go back. Or sometimes, like I said, when we read this story, we want to skip to the end. We want to get to the happy parts. We want to read about chubby little babies in warm, fuzzy blankets with singing angels and happy shepherds. We want to get to that part. But I want to say, no, slow down. Read this Christmas story for all it's worth. Feel the tension. Feel the long, dark road that Joseph was walking on. Because much of our life is like that, much of our life. And so what does Joseph do? He just keeps walking. And that's why I have our first lesson is keep walking, keep enduring, keep trusting. He doesn't give up on God. He doesn't turn back. He keeps walking. Joseph doesn't have perfect faith. But you know what? He has enduring faith. He's like, I'm going to stick with this no matter what. And I want to say to you today, if you're going through something really hard and it feels like this road is just going on and on and on, can I just encourage you, don't give up. Don't quit on God. Endure. Keep walking. Keep persevering in faith. I have this key idea on the screen, and I'm hoping this thought kind of sticks with you as you go, and it's this, that hard times alone do not produce deeper spirituality, but only suffering or hard times that is endured in faith. Faith is the key to enduring with God. Here's a second lesson that I wanted to share from this passage this morning, and it's this, is that God is doing work in the long, hard nights. On the hard roads. I think God is at work on those, in those times, on those days. Maybe I could go out on a limb and say maybe God does his best work on the long, hard roads, doesn't he? I think all of us, when we hit hard times, we start to question God. I have a few questions that people ask on these long, hard roads that we've been talking about. I think the first question that many ask is, why? Why, God? Why in the world are you allowing me to walk on this hard, lonely road? Why? And really, this is the classic problem of pain. We ask God, why, God, if you are all powerful, and you are all loving, and you are all good, why do you allow the worst things to happen to the best people? Why do you allow evil and pain and suffering in my life, in this world and in my life? Why do you allow sickness and cancer? Why do you allow hurricanes? Why do you allow fires in California? But I want to remind you of this. The answer is not easy or simple, but God is at work. He is doing something. God is not a bully. He uses these hard times. There's a purpose, and maybe you don't see it today, but I want to say keep trusting, keep walking. Here's the second question, I think. Well, I mentioned this first. Willow Creek, which is a large church in Barrington, Illinois. A while ago, they did a survey of over 1,000 people, asking them what has caused the most spiritual growth, the most spiritual formation in their lives. They found that the overwhelming number one answer was pain and suffering. Isn't that exciting? Isn't that just one of the great pieces of news we can do? All right, here's the second question I have here. Why does God seem silent in my suffering? And I want to remind you this morning that God is not absent when we're going through something hard. God is not silent. He's right there with you. He's doing something. He's at work. Here's the last question that I think a lot of people ask. Can God be trusted on this long, hard road? I think maybe this is the biggest question for Joseph of all, is can I trust God? Is he really telling me the truth in this? And I think it's the same for all of us. Can God be trusted? I think a lot of us in life will say, or we think what we want is certainty. I think more than certainty, we want trust. We want to be able to trust God. We want to be able to trust people. For example, when you trust someone, you give them a bit of your heart, don't you? You give them a bit of your love. You give them even a bit of your things when you trust someone. You give them a bit of your secrets. And it's an act of love. You hand them all of you when you trust them. And in return, you hope that they can be trustworthy. You hope that they can be faithful. And this is the test for Joseph. And Joseph trusts God. The thing is, on the hard roads, there's a lot of people we can't trust. But God is different. But maybe, for example, you've had a business partner and you've learned the hard way that all business partners cannot be trusted. Or maybe there's been a friend who's hurt you with what they knew about you, and you've learned that some friends cannot be trusted. Or even maybe there's a family member who you can't trust. Like, for example, 3-year-olds cannot be trusted. I learned that the hard way. What happened is it was my wife's birthday. It was in winter, and I wanted to buy her something that would help in a Chicago winter. We just had wood floors in our room. And so his brother was off at school, so I took my second oldest son, he was only 3 at the time, Spencer. I took him shopping with me. And we go to this Oriental rug store, and I find this nice, thick, plush throw rug. And I thought, it's $200, but I need to get it. She's going to love this. She's going to love it in wintertime. And so we rolled it up, paid the $200. And as I'm putting it in the car, I sat next to him, and I said, look me in the eye, Spencer. I said, listen to me. I said, you're not going to tell your mother what I bought her for her birthday. He says, okay. I say, listen, you're not going to say a word. He says, I won't say anything. He kind of mumbled that. He didn't talk a whole lot at the time. Anyway, so we get home, we throw the carpet in the basement, then we go upstairs. He runs in the kitchen, and he says, hey, Mom, guess what? He said, Dad just bought you a birthday present. It's a rug. It costs $200. I'm like, what? I thought we were friends. 3-year-olds cannot be trusted. Some people cannot be trusted. But Joseph keeps trusting. Joseph sticks with it. All right, let's move on. Here's the final lesson this morning, and it says, God always has something new and good at the end of the road. I think in the middle of a hard time, a long, hard road, we can't see any good in it. But if you look back, and I've done this in my life, when you look back, you see that God was at work and he has something good waiting for us. If I go back to our Colorado story, the next morning we woke up, we drove, by the way, everybody had been sick, so I went and got donuts. Donuts have healing power. We loaded in the Suburban, went up the mountain. They had cleared the roads, threw our stuff in our condo, and rushed to Vail. And I didn't know this, but Vail has a gondola. We had never been in a gondola. The thing takes us way up to the top. We get out. The powder is 4 feet thick. The whole day, we're snowboarding. It was magical. It's like one of my favorite family moments ever. If you ask me, would I make the road trip again? You know, the 16-hour nightmare. Yes, in a heartbeat. In a minute, I'll take the E. coli and the poison calamari. I'll take all of it because at the end, it was worth it. And I think a lot of ways, life is like that. That at the time, we can only see the pain and we go, God, this is the worst thing ever. You know, get it over with now. But if we can be patient enough, and when we look back or when we get there, we see that God was at work and he has something good for us. Look at Matthew with me one more time, verse 21, chapter 1. She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. Isn't that incredible? That's the payoff. That's the end of the story. That's been That's what's been waiting for Joseph and for Mary. You will give birth to a son who will save humanity forever, for eternity. Can it get any better than that? And I just want to remind you this morning that it's like that with your life. If you're going through something hard and it seems like a road that goes on and will never end, I want to say endure, be patient, have faith, trust God. He's at work. He has a purpose. He never wastes a hard time. And he's doing something that you will realize soon is good and new. And he's prepared you for something.